Welcome back to part 3 of the budget gravel series. In the previous video, we determined that this bike can handle some pretty basic gravel. While there's a 99% chance that no one's ever going to podium a race on this bike, it isn't a slug either. Now, with the return of a lot of rain here on the Sunshine Coast, I have not bothered to brave the trails and cover myself in mud. Instead, I've opted to put in a few road Ks on this bike to get us a little bit closer to that 400 kilometer mark. But how quick is it compared to a road bike? And could this be the perfect all-rounder? Let's find out. So we're here at Skippy Park today, which is the local criterium track on the south end of the Sunshine Coast. And I don't really know what I have in mind. Basically just laps. So I'll put in a couple of laps on the fluid, a couple of laps on this. At the end of it, I'll decide what's the fairest way to compare the two. At the moment, the track's pretty quiet, but when I first got here, there was quite a few people walking around. Also, something to keep in mind, which is gonna impact the laps a bit, is on the entrance to the track, there are gates that block it off, and there's only a narrow passage through, so cars can go one way, and then when they actually race the crits, they swing the gates the other way so the cars can't get through, and you have a quick pass through. But because it's not a crit day, they've got the gates open, and it's a bit of a blind corner coming up to it, so I don't want to rush through it too quickly. So if I can't get consistent results through that gate, then I might put it down to segments from just this half of the track, which is quite open and free flowing, and I should be able to sort of crack around that 30k mark on there. So in the past week, we have put 170 kilometers into this bike, and that includes 1,750 meters of elevation to determine whether this is more than just a cheap gravel bike. Could this be the perfect all-rounder? So whether or not you want to give into the hype of wider tires and relaxed geometry, it is the new trend in road cycling. And I mean, with this bike, you get plenty of tire clearance, very relaxed geometry, and it's already got disc brakes. So the upgrade to hydraulic disc brakes to this is quite an easy task. But you also have to consider the weight. This is an entry-level gravel bike. I'm riding on what would be considered an entry-level road bike, even though it is quite well spec'd. There is nearly 3 kilos difference between the two. First two done. Now, in all my wisdom, I've forgotten the 3mm Allen key to swap my quad lock mount over so I can fit my phone on the handlebars. So now it's just tucked under my shorts, and I'll just have to see what I got at the end. Unfortunately, but here's what it is. Let's go. First lap's on the Reid done, and I guess I kind of got used to riding that fluid because I was sort of used to the gearing on it, the weight of it, accelerating out of corners, until I jump back on this. And this is a 10 kilo road bike, and it just feels like a feather. All right, second lap's done on the fluid. Now I'm obviously gonna have to do second laps on the Reid to rule out fatigue, but jumping between this bike, the Reid, and then back to this bike again, it just feels slow. It's not a slow bike, but compared to something that's 3 kilos lighter on narrow tires on a flat track, it does feel a bit slow.
So yeah, finish this cool down on this lap, straight back into the Reid, then we'll wrap it up. That's 8 laps done, and it is noticeably less fatiguing on this bike. I'm not as out of breath, and yeah, I'm interested to see the numbers when I get home.
And we're back. So let's kick it off with a couple of time comparisons. And the first 2 laps that we did were on the fluid Alpine, and we completed those laps in a time of 4 minutes and 10 seconds with a max speed of 36 kilometers an hour. So after we completed the 2 laps on the fluid, we did 1 cool down lap, then jumped straight on the Reid. On the Reid, we completed 2 laps in 3 minutes and 57 seconds with a max speed of 38.7 kilometers an hour. We then did another cool down lap, jumped back on the fluid. We got 2 laps done in 4:15, so slightly fatigued, obviously, with a max speed of 35.4. Same again, cool down lap, jump back on the Reid. The final 2 laps we did in a 4 minute and 1 second with a max speed of 39.4 kilometers an hour. So the times are relatively consistent, and here's some butchered maths, but the track is roughly 1.3 kilometers long. So for 2 laps, we'll just say that it's 2.5 Ks. And yeah, the efforts, I would say, were like 85–90%. Like I was pretty gassed by the end of each effort, which means that at the end of like a 10 kilometer full out effort, you would only be a minute behind on this bike here. So unless you are planning on racing, that is not a great deal in the big scheme of things. The bike itself is just a tool, and it is just a marginal gain. You're the engine of your bike, and a better bike is not going to necessarily make you a better rider. And now we'll move on to bike feel. So since I've pulled this out of the box and assembled it, it has pretty much been the sole bike that I have ridden since I got it. So I have grown accustomed to the feel of the bike, the gears, the brakes, the endurance geometry, the weight of the bike. So with the first 2 laps, it was as I expected and felt incredibly smooth. It also felt pretty fast because, yeah, I wasn't used to riding anything else. But that was all crushed as soon as I got on the Reid. The weight difference between the 2 bikes was immediately noticeable. The effort that I had to put in to get up to speed, the fatigue that I felt at the end of the 2 laps was much lower. But when it comes down to feel on the bike, it is completely personal preference, obviously, but the weight difference is the big draw card with these bikes. So a few of the pros and cons for the fluid Alpine as a road bike. Now, it is very comfortable, slack geometry. The tyres give a nice, smooth, plush ride on the road. Climbing with the 34-32 gearing, even loaded up at 15 kilos, it's quite manageable. As I said, over the last week, we've done 170 Ks and done over 1,700 meters of elevation. Also, with descending, we got to a max speed of 70 kilometers an hour, and it was only at around the 55 kilometer an hour mark where these tires started to feel slightly unstable cornering. Another big pro with this bike, when I was on my 100K ride, there's one small section of road where there is 0 shoulder on a blind corner on a 100 kilometer zone, and it's always the sketchiest part on my road bike, and I just mash through it as quick as I can to get out the other side safely. Whereas on this bike here, I could just hit the gravel shoulder and ride along quite comfortably. As a road bike, with these particular tires on it, it doesn't really have any terrain limitations, which leads to the biggest pro of all, and that is that it is a fun bike. You can jump off the road, ride a gravel shoulder. You can hop gutters, you can jump speed bumps, you can just bash around on it, and it will take everything that you throw at it on the road. But there are some cons. The most noticeable cons are all down to the weight of the bike. It is a heavy bike, so it is hard to get up to speed. It is harder to maintain speed. When you are hopping up and down gutters, you need to use more muscle. So overall, riding this bike is somewhat more fatiguing than riding my road bike, where this is heavier and you will exert a lot more force and effort to hold those speeds and keep those Strava times low. It is smooth and comfortable to ride. So the only real con in the parts that the bike is spec'd with is unfortunately the seat. After the 70K ride that I did on this, I did develop a little bit of soreness from the saddle. And after seeing Lachlan Morton's interview with Bike Radar, he has an extremely tilted down nose on his saddle. So I thought, well, if he can do it, why don't I just try it out? And I just did one notch down to take a little bit of the pressure from downstairs. And while it did work to relieve a bit of that pressure down there, I just felt like I was sliding down the saddle for the whole 100 Ks that I was on the bike. While the saddle, it might work for some people, and while it is comfortable enough for like a commuter bike, you could sit on that for 20 Ks, no worries. If you're gonna sit on that for an extended period of time, you may benefit from something that has a bit of a pressure relief channel. And if I am to keep this bike, it is something that I'll definitely need to upgrade if I'm gonna continue to put long kilometers into it. So my thoughts as a below average cyclist is what matters more, speed or comfort? Because what this bike does lack in the speed, it well and truly makes up for in the comfort factor. Much like if you were to upgrade this as a gravel bike, there is so many parts available that you could definitely upgrade this as a road bike. You could probably build this into a sub 10 kilo road bike for under $1,000, and you would still have enough tire clearance for when the new road trend is to go 40 mil and above. Or you could also just swap between road tires and gravel tires and have this as your all-round bike. So would I buy this solely as a road bike? No. However, if I was tight on space and I wanted something that I could ride road, I could tour with, I could ride gravel, and it's cheap enough that depending on your financial situation, it could be used as your pub bike and your grocery getter, then yes, it would make a great all-rounder on a budget. So I feel like maybe I have said too much prior to the final review, and you can probably guess how it's gonna go. I just have my fingers crossed that the weather clears up so I can get the last 100 Ks in solely on the trails. Then we can pull the bike down, see how it's fared, and yeah, I can give you my full honest opinion on the bike. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got something out of it. And yeah, I know it's not the gravel video you probably expected to see, but if you have made it this far, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, chuck a comment down below, share it to somebody that may be keen on having a look at one of these bikes. And yeah, have a great day. Until the next one. That's just the warm-up.